Nakam, Namaste, Namaskar. Welcome back to Jal Prayag. Today I'm going to talk about load lines. If you realize load lines can be broadly divided into two categories. One is for all ships, and you can give a separate load line assigned for ships carrying timber. So that is why they are called timber load lines. I'm going to talk about the all ships, which is the basic load line. So I'll try to make two different videos, one for all ships and the next one will be for timber. So today let us have a look on the all ships version of it. Let us try to understand what are the basic features, and we can then continue on the next session for your timber. Okay, before I start, I'm not trying to teach you what is port, starboard, bow, and stern. My idea is to highlight a few of the places which are going to be linked to the load lines, because you need to understand how slightly differently they're placed on the port side and the starboard side. So I'm just trying to highlight the port side and the starboard side. And besides this, I want to just show you a few more features which will be helpful for the beginners. As always, my aim is BSc and the first time competency exam candidates, which is your second match. If you see here, I've highlighted something called length between perpendiculars, LBP. Now, this is what is LBP. I marked with an arrow also. It is the distance between the forward perpendicular and the aft perpendicular. Okay, it's quite important in stability because we'll be using LBP as our reference point for all the calculations. So you should know what is LBP. Now, besides that, you have something called summer load line. That has got some importance. We have partly seen earlier in our definitions also, summer load line is quite important. So this is that summer load line. And it is also called as a load water line also. I'll show you in the next slide. There's something called midships. You can call it a midships also. Normally, it's very popularly called as midships. It has got importance in the load lines as well. A quick view of a few more measurements which will be involved in this particular topic of load lines. I'll just rephrase load water line, which is just now we saw summer load line, and that is this line here. Then after that, I will be interested in something called draft. Remember, drafts are always measured from the keel going upwards. So I'm showing you the same thing in one more picture also. Then if I'm interested in draft, I'm interested in something else also, which is called freeboard. Freeboard is measured in this direction, the way I've shown you. And similarly on this also. When you add your freeboard and draft, it is also called as the depth of the vessel. Now, as I told you, drafts are measured from the keel moving upwards. So freeboard also has a reference point. I'm going to talk about that reference point. So we start measuring from that reference point going downwards till your waterline. So these are some features which will come to you in the topics. So I thought a beginner, it'll be easy for you to visualize this picture when I start talking about the different load line marks. Now, this picture is just to give you a fair idea how it is going to look in real life. So you can see the left side picture is a kind of a real life picture taken out of a vessel. You can see the letters NK and AB. So they're talking about some societies, classification societies. I'm not going into that, but generally how load line marks look like. This is what is very, very generic. So I'm going to break up these and talk about each of them. So let us start off. This one picture shows you a lot of dimensions. Today, I'm not going to look at the separations between a few pictures which are there in this particular slide. I'm not going to go into those small details, but I'll be talking about some important features which are required for you to know. But yes, before you go for an exam, you are supposed to remember, you may be asked about this distance, just like an example, this 540 millimeter. You may be asked about it. So just have a look on that also. But I will not be talking about this 540 or this 230 millimeter. I'm not going to talk about that. But I'll be talking about rest of them. So this one picture is looking a little bit cramped, but it gives you a fair idea that you have some measurements. So let us go on my slide. Let us start one by one. We'll look at the first most important thing, which is also called as your Plimsole mark. It is in a shape of a circle. It can be called as Plimsole circle also, but it's popularly called as Plimsole mark. Now, this Plimsole mark is always at the midship. If you remember a couple of slides back, I told you what is a midship. I'm going to define midship also. Midship is nothing but a spot which is exactly halfway of your length between perpendiculars. So it is LBP by 2. So this is a reference mark for you where I'm going to draw this Plimsole circle. So let me put this Plimsole circle here. Okay, let me start with this. This is exactly the midship. Now I'm going to take an example of, let us say, starboard side. I could have taken port side also, doesn't matter. I'll take starboard. Now I have a grid. A grid means I will have a couple of vertical and horizontal lines. That grid is placed always forward of your Plimsole. So if I take this as starboard side, you will have this grid always forward of the Plimsole mark. So just remember this. This is how you differentiate between port and starboard. Okay. Now, this load line disk or your Plimsole mark matches with the summer saltwater draft. So I'm going to put a horizontal line. You will see this line also, which will exactly match with summer saltwater draft. Now, a small clue for you. I have put the Plimsole circle and this horizontal line in green color, as well as your summer also in green color. That indicates that I'm talking about seawater. I'll be changing the color for something else. So you can use this reference. I have tried to give some color coding on the bordering also. So there is a pattern for that, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Let us just stick on to the important points. So green color talks about salt water. Okay. Now all the measurements on your load lines are always on the top edge of the lines. So that means this is the top edge. You'll be looking at top edges to refer to the water line. Okay, this is what it is. Now let us look at the next one. Now 1/48 of the summer draft. I've already given you what is your summer load line just now. So you will know what is the draft. 1/48 of this summer draft is going to be the vertical distance between your summer load line and winter load line. And both of them, I'm still talking about salt water. So I'm going to go down by 1/48. And I'm going to mark this as winter. Now, why the winter should be lesser than the summer? Concept is because of bad weather, rough seas. You'll always find that as and when you go up on the northern latitudes or southern latitudes, you will encounter a lot of rough weather when you reach higher latitudes, particularly in winter. That's again a topic of meteorology. I'm not going to go into that. So they say that you do not load up to your Sierra mark, S mark. You please load up to only W mark, which is your winter mark. Okay. So basically what I'm doing is I'm giving you extra freeboard. If you remember the previous videos which I have done, there was a topic called reserve buoyancy. So obviously in this case, I'm trying to give extra reserve buoyancy in winter for the ship. That is your primary purpose. So that is the reason why winter is below your summer load line. Okay, let us look at the next one. Now again, 1 by 48 of the same summer draft is going to be vertical distance between the summer and the next higher one, which is called tropical. So I go up by 1 by 48 and mark this tropical. Now, again, why tropical you are able to load more? Because the places which are tropical regions, which is more near the equator, you will see that the amount of rough seas are not as much as what you get in the places of higher latitudes. So that is why it is called tropical. Tropical is a region which is around the equator. So I'm allowed to load more. That means I can take the risk of having lesser reserve buoyancy. So if you load up to tropical, it is going to have lesser reserve buoyancy. Now all these three, tropical, summer, and winter, are marked with green color. So please realize they're all the seawater load lines. So salt water, which normally is your 1.025. Okay, it is saltwater load lines. Now, one of the dimensions which is important you should remember is all these lines, whatever I've shown you, they're all 25 millimeter thick. So I'm just showing you on two of them. So this is one of the important dimensions which you should remember. And again, as a recap, always the measurements are taken from the top edge of this 25 millimeter line. So please be careful. You'll have to look only on the top edge. Okay, let us proceed further. Let me go to the next one. Now, I have one more condition, and it is called winter North Atlantic line. Okay. Now, again, that is on the seawater side of it or saltwater side of it, which is fixed 50 millimeter below your W, which is winter. Okay, I'm going to go 50 millimeter below. I'm going to draw one more line, which is called WNA. What is special about this? Now, this particular load line is applicable to ships which are equal to or less than 100 meter in length. And they are sailing in North Atlantic, and that too in winter season. Okay. So again, this is a saltwater or seawater or load line. Now, why this special load line for vessels less than 100 meters? I'm not going into a big detail. Let me just quickly phrase you one line. Normally, you will see that the length of the waves, which you see which you notice in the waters of the sea, which is in North Atlantic in winter, usually go beyond 100 meters. The idea is when a ship of less than 100 meters comes with these long wavelengths, it is a little bit risky because you will have a lot of shipping seas on your deck and your maneuverability also becomes very poor. So for that reason, for vessels which are less than 100 meters, sailing in North Atlantic and in winter, in salt water, you are supposed to load only up to WNA. Just remember, is only a fixed 50 millimeter below your winter load line. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of more dimensions. What about this diameter of this disc is going to be 300 millimeter. So this, just remember, this is going to be 300 millimeter. Now, exactly top of the Plimsole Mark is something called a deck line. Okay, it's a very important feature of your load line marks, deck line. This deck line becomes your reference to start measuring any freeboard. It's impractical for you to go and measure anything from the keel when you're already sailing. Okay, but you can measure it from the deck line, which is above your water line. Is always above your water line. So deck line becomes very important reference mark for you the moment the vessel is put down in the water. Even before putting down in the water also, you will see the body of the ship's always curved. So trying to get a reference from the keel is not very easy, not very normal. But yes, measuring from the deck line is very easy. So that is why this is an important mark. Let us quickly look into that. The length of this deck line is also exactly similar to the dia of the disc. Now, this is an important line, as I told you. This is the zero reference for measuring important title called statutory freeboard. The word statutory means as per the law. You're supposed to keep this. Now, the statutory freeboard requires that I should maintain my water line exactly at the top edge of the summer load line in salt water, particularly when I'm in summer season. So in that case, I'll be complying with the statutory freeboard. And this feature is always mentioned to you in your load line certificate. What is your statutory freeboard? Now, this is the measurement. And this measurement is again taken from the top of the deck line to top of your summer load line. Just as a quick information for you, ships usually have something called load line batten. It is a kind of instrument, just a plain simple, I can call it a scale. It's a scale which is available to you and is pre-marked with your statutory freeboard. So any inspector can come. So he can put the load line batten on the ship side, marking with your deck line, and he will see whether the markings match exactly between your deck line and your summer load line. So it is just to ensure that nobody has altered the load line disc or the grids, whatever you have. It is possible that people can change it to suit themselves so that we can load extra. So just to cross check, surveyors and the inspectors can ask for a load line batten. They can cross check this and just to check if it is matching exactly with your load line certificate. Now, till now what we saw, these 4 lines on the seawater: tropical, summer, winter, and winter North Atlantic. All of them, I told you, are marked with green color inside the body of those lines. So they are representing salt water. But I can sail in freshwater also. So vessels which are supposed to or which can go into freshwater, they will not comply with these lines. Why? Because these lines are meant only for salt water. Then what do you do for freshwater? Then you have something different for that. And for freshwater, I'm going to use the definition called freshwater allowance. We have already defined what is freshwater allowance. So your freshwater allowance, if you remember, is the rise and sink of the vessel whenever you sail between salt water and your freshwater. So here, let us say your vessel was exactly at the water line was exactly at top of your summer load line when you were at sea. And now you are coming to a freshwater port. Then what could be your draft? Then that is what is your freshwater allowance, and it is called capital F. Is exactly simple as we had discussed earlier also. I had talked about this in a little bit detail last time when I did the definition of freshwater allowance. You should realize that whenever you sail between freshwater and seawater, there is either a rise or sink depending on the direction. So when you come from salt water to freshwater, you will have a sink. That is why now your load line will start, water line will start matching with the capital F. Now, if you load in a freshwater port and I load up to capital F, you should realize that when I sail back to the seawater, again, it is going to rise, vessel is going to rise, and the water line will become exactly matching with the summer load line, which is S. So this is the advantage of this freshwater allowance being marked on your load lines. Now, again, I have one more. Similarly, the same freshwater allowance can be applied to tropical also. So this Tango was a tropical seawater. Now, what do I do if I enter a port which is freshwater and in tropical? Similarly, same thing, it can be called as freshwater allowance. This is the sinkage, and you can load up to your tropical freshwater marks in case you are loading in freshwater port. Okay, this is the relation between your freshwater allowance, what we discussed in the last class. Now, if you look at very logically, now again, 1/48 of summer draft is going to be this distance also, which is exactly the same distance between saltwater summer and saltwater tropical. Okay. Now, I had mentioned in the previous session when I was talking about freshwater allowance, I said I'll talk about allowance. What do you mean by allowance? Now, this is what is allowance. Allowance means whenever you're not loading in a seawater port, let us say any port which is either dock water or freshwater, you can always submerge your load line, whichever is a permissible load line, you can submerge it. Let us say I'm in summer zone. So if I'm loading in a place which is not exactly seawater, I can submerge it. The reason being exactly the same principle of freshwater allowance or dock water allowance. So it is a rise and sink when you shift between the two waters. And my ultimate aim is whenever I reach seawater, when I'm getting out of a port, that time I should not violate any of my 4 load line zones which I've given you on the right side. That means if I am in tropical, I should maintain Tango. If I am in summer, I should maintain Sierra. Winter is Whiskey. And obviously the last one is your winter North Atlantic. So the moment I reach seawater, which is normally the high seas, I should never violate the 4 load line zones which are marked in green color: tropical, summer, winter, and winter North Atlantic. But the loading and discharging always can be done somewhere in between. You can do it in dock water or freshwater also. So whenever you load, I can always load or submerge or go beyond my prescribed load line marks, because I know when I'm coming back, that means I'm sailing from this freshwater back to saltwater, I'm going to rise. So when I rise, I'm going to come and match with my green color lines, which is on the right side. So this is why it is called allowance. You are allowed to submerge your load lines whenever you're loading in freshwater or dock water. As far as I do not violate my load lines, which is mentioned for seawater for that particular zone and the season, I'm good. So this is what is the meaning of allowance. Okay, again, I'll just quickly put into a simple thing. Let me say I'm right now in salt water and the water line is exactly matching Sierra. Now, if I sail into freshwater port, my vessel will sink and will start matching with Foxtrot, which is F, which is freshwater. Now, if I do the reverse, let me load in a freshwater port. So I can submerge my summer load line. I will load up to F. And then when I sail and come out of this freshwater port, let us say I'm coming back to sea, again, my vessel is going to rise and I'm going to come and exactly match with my summer load line, which is Sierra. So that is the whole idea regarding allowance. You will be using this concept in most of your problems because they will give you ships which are either in freshwater or dock water. So this is where you use the concept called freshwater allowance and dock water allowance. This picture I've repeated for a particular reason. I'm going to show you again how to remember this, how to remember which is a port side and starboard side. Just a quick recap. This is your Plimsole mark or your disc or your circle, which will be exactly at the midships. Midship is half of the LBP. Now the grid which you see will be always in the forward direction. This is the grid. And in the grid, if you remember, or if you can figure out from this picture, there are two freshwater marks, which is in the form of a F. You can see it is the form of an F, reverse F. And that is what is this. I marked with blue color to highlight as freshwater. This F is always facing aft. Please look at the remaining three. These three are saltwater marks. It is in the form of echo, E, tropical summer and winter. It is a form of a E, letter E. And this E is always facing forward. This is just one of the ways to remember. It is just a kind of thumb rule. If it makes you comfortable, remember this way. Otherwise, then you'll have to figure your own way of remembering. Okay. A quick picture of a load line zone, which is around the world. I'm not going to talk about these zones, it's just to highlight and tell you that there are different zones. They're different colored. And just as a quick one, you will see this brownish, light brownish color area. They're all your tropical zones because they are near your equator. Okay. Then you will have summer zones, then you'll have winter zones. A lot of zones are seasonal. That is completely a different topic altogether for learning about these zones. So I'm not getting involved in that. You will find these kind of charts on your vessel. You can Google it also, and you can expand and see different zones, what are the dates and which months they change. So it is only to highlight what do you mean by load line chart. Now, just a last slide for you. Aim for all this anyway at the end of the day is for you to use it in solving the problems, questions of stability. You will always get questions regarding drafts and displacement. So in no case, your aim is to not to violate that particular zone's load line when you are loading and coming out in saltwater. So your saltwater is your high seas, so you should never violate either tropical or your summer or your winter or winter North Atlantic. Okay. I'm going to give you some clues about the problems, how these words come in the problems also. Now, in any question, if they do not specify the TPC, whether it is TPC freshwater, saltwater, dock water, please consider it as TPC saltwater and proceed with the questions. These are all clues for your questions. If it is not mentioned, take it for granted that it is TPC saltwater and proceed with the problem. You can mention this also. Now, if any question says the load line mark is at the water surface, what does it mean? It means the top edge and the water line are matching. That is what is the meaning. Now, some questions refer to as permissible draft. If nothing is mentioned, the word permissible draft means summer load line. So he says the water line should be on the top of the summer load line, which is equal to your load displacement. Now, at the same time, questions can come reverse using your freeboards. So the word permissible draft, if it is for summer load line, is very evident that the freeboard is the statutory freeboard. Okay. Now, questions can come, a simple question in your stability or draft questions can come in a listed condition. So usually before you try to solve any question, please correct it to upright condition and use the average draft. So I'm going to just quickly show you a small picture. Let us say this vessel is starboard listed. So for me, I can go either by drafts or freeboard. Let us go by the drafts first. You should realize that the starboard draft is going to be more than the port draft. Please do not try to solve a question like this. It's better for you to upright this vessel because just by uprighting, you are only shifting internally. So that is the concept here. So upright the vessel and solve the problem. Now, how do I do it? I can take the two drafts and find an average, and you will see I can write the average drafts like this, and then now proceed with the question. You should realize what happens if I go the reverse using your freeboard. So in starboard listed condition, starboard draft is more, port draft is less. In freeboard, it will be exactly opposite. Starboard, freeboard will be lesser, port will be more. So you can make an average of these two also. And now please proceed with the question, you'll get the answer. Okay, this is some clues for you to start solving. That's it for today. I hope it was useful. And I'll be catching up with you in the next series of load lines if I make it in the sequence. I'll be talking about your timber load line. So that's not going to be so big topic. It's going to be a small one. But yes, you still know those people who are going to appear for orals, second merit level. They are supposed to know about the timber load lines also and the few small differences. So I'll catch you with that in the next series if I'm continuing with the stability, or else I have plans of even going back to a little bit on the navigation part of it as well. So till then, keep watching Jal Prayag. Vanakkam, namaste, namaskar. I'll catch you soon. Thank you.